Good evening and welcome to Saturday Night Live with Chef Brackman. Hello? Okay, just give everybody a moment to join. Can you hear me this time? Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Good evening. Okay, perfect. So it's been an interesting day in Doha because we're caught up in a war again this time. So it's been since we saw it on the news in the morning, we rushed to the shop, everyone was in the shop stocking up, and then the missiles started flying. It's been scary, especially for the children, but we have hope that we'll remain safe and this too will pass. So today's topic is grooming is a process, not an accident. And I've been laying the groundwork for the story that I'm about to tell, which hopefully will. I have a lot of stories, like a lot of things happened to me from age 13 to age 18. But basically, I felt that this story was the most traumatic for me after the fact, like the most traumatic in the long run. At the time that this was happening, which was like the entire relationship took like 4 months, it felt safe. It felt like love. It felt like I'd finally found somebody who understood me, who looked after me. I didn't understand. I was, over my head. Like, I am making this just so that as a parent or even as a teenager, when you decide to have a relationship, or if your teenage child is having a relationship with an adult and their children, their frontal lobe is not quite developed. They cannot make certain decisions, and it's grooming because they really cannot compete. The age gap and everything. So I will just tell the story, then I will give the summary to just tie it down, right? This is a story of how I almost ended up married or pregnant at 17 to someone who was much older than me. Just telling this story because earlier this year, was it last year, there was a Nigerian actress that allegedly got married to a much older man at age 17. And at the point where that marriage broke down, there was a lot of dragging of the lady in question, but not the husband, who was much older and married her as a fifth or sixth wife. And this is what society typically does. And if the balance of power was really so bad, like the man was very rich and he was powerful, so they'll just say the family is broke and they married out of poverty. So I just want to give a different side of the story. My family was not broke. My father worked in an oil company at the time and worked in this same company. Just so you know that when a child is effectively groomed, it gets to a stage, they will not hear anything. They will really believe that in a good place. And, so let me go back. Last week, I stopped the story at the point where the Frenchman who was grooming me had gone to visit to finally agree to the relationship. And then I found his ex-girlfriend there and I ran back home. I was very upset. That's where I stopped. So now let me tell you, before this whole French guy started being on my matter, there was a man, a 34-year-old man from Brunei. Until I met this man, I didn't even know Brunei was a country. He was from Brunei. He was 34 years old. He was Muslim. He told me that he was widowed and he had 2 daughters. So at the angle he was coming at me at, which was why I ran for a long time. And when the French guy was nicer looking. He was Catholic. I knew where France was. I knew some French. So he made sense. So I went that way. And then when he upset me deeply, I just said, okay, you know what? I'm just going to go and listen to what this guy from Brunei has to say. And this is what children can do. Because your decision-making skills, your idea of consequences and this kind of things are not fully developed, right? So when what happened with the French guy happened, I called the guy from Brunei. Like this story is something that I've tried to repress because he wasn't the finest looking guy. Like, I had to sit down long and hard and reflect, like, how did I get into this relationship? And then it started to come back to me, and I realized that I'd had years of trauma just from being in that relationship. So I will just tell you the story, and then you see what I mean. So he was like, at the point, I didn't realize that he had researched me. By the way, the French guy also researched me. And the guy who like gave him my file, told him everything about me. He apologized to me later. He was a Nigerian man. He was actually our family friend. But I don't know who told the Bruneian guy about me. But it's like he knew everything. So he knew what to say, what not to say, how to behave. I had no chance at all. So at the time, a lot had happened. I was isolated in the camp. All these people claiming I was trying to snatch their husbands. I was 17 at this point. I couldn't play with kids my age mates because their parents didn't want me to hang out with them. So I was only hanging out with adults. And even among the adults, there was always rumor and gossip. And I just wanted someone to be my person, someone I could talk to. And this was what this guy was providing essentially at the point. I was a very angry child. So he would take me to the golf driving range, set balls, and just tell me to hit them as far as possible. I should imagine that whatever was annoying me was the ball. And then he also taught me badminton. So we'll go to badminton and I'll be smashing shuttles. Like back then, if I smash a shuttle, I don't care whether it lands on your eye or your body or anywhere. I was just smashing things. So badminton, golf, we used to go swim. Like he used to play every sport. So we went out for sports a lot. And this was where the whole gaining of trust, and is like at the point also, of course, he was trying things. He was trying to have sex with me and I was resisting it. I told him I was still a virgin, and I think he had gone to talk to other people who had claimed they had been with me. So I think he was starting to piece together that the way the community works, that people are talking and nobody actually has any evidence of anything. So this is how this relationship started. I was an angry child. I just needed someone to be my own person. I finished WAEC in July. I came back in August. I think this was about when this whole thing started. He will come about the house, pick me up, we'll go and do sports. I come to his house, we watch movies, we play karaoke. It seemed safe, it seemed normal. But of course, I was the child, the whole community, they were just gossiping about us. My mom didn't live on the island. My dad, at this point, if he knew about this, I don't know. He never said anything to me. But people were talking and I didn't care. Like it had gotten to the point that I'd grown a thick skin. This person is kind and good to me. I don't care about what anybody else was saying. That was just the face this whole thing was. I didn't even understand. Like I used to forgive everything. Like when he gives me the silent treatment, when he ignores me, I'll just try to make it up, because how can I lose the only person that was making sense to me? If I don't know if you'll understand, but I just think that teenagers should not date adults. It's just very unbalanced. Yeah. So there was a time I had to go to Port Harcourt to go and get my first international passport. And I was supposed to catch the first boat, go to Port Harcourt, apply for the passport and come back. That night, he came to my bedroom window. I remember he knocked. He gave me his extra cell phone. He went and bought a SIM card and put in it so that he could be in touch with me the whole day, because kids didn't have cell phones in 2003 in Nigeria. So he gave me his spare cell phone and some cash so I can have lunch in Port Harcourt. And I left. I went to Port Harcourt. I did my passport. Then I caught the last boat back. When I stepped off the boat, I saw that my father was there to pick me up. Then I looked up. He also came to pick me up from the jetty, but he was sitting in his truck. So I walk out with my father. I see him in his truck. I just wave at him and follow my father home. I mean, this is logical, right? I mean, was there any other option? And then he called me later on the day. He was angry that I'm like, even as a child, I'm like, you thought I would get in your car? Like, but I think he gave me silent treatment for like 3 days where I was apologizing for this. Do you understand? As an adult, you will not have apologized, you will not have groveled. And the danger with having this kind of behaviors earlier on is that you continue in this kind of behavior later on. So grooming doesn't only affect the behavior of the child at the time that they were groomed, but they become people pleasers later. Things just keep escalating from there. That is why I am making this, just to make sure that you protect your children. And if you are a teenager right now, you should know that you're really not it. And also, I've talked about last 2 weeks, I said we should stop talking marriage to children. It has consequences, because I was a girl who, my mom wasn't there, so I was kind of the mom in the house. I had 4 siblings. I did all the cooking. I did everything. So he had heard this story. So he was, oh, you'll be such a good mom to my daughters. The daughters were staying with his mom, and he wanted to bring them to Nigeria because his mom was getting old to take care of them. That was the story. So he was preparing me to become the mom of these girls, and I was preparing to go to university. So it's always like I had to choose between going to university or staying back on the island and becoming a mom to these girls. And it was a difficult position to put a child in. And then there was also the point about the religion. He was Muslim, which means you have to convert to Islam as well. And I was 17 and I had so many things coming at me at the same time. And at the time, I also noticed he was still wearing his wedding ring. So one day, I think we had a fight because I can't remember what he was giving me silent treatment about. And I said to him, you're giving me silent treatment and you're still wearing the wedding ring from your old marriage. How long has your wife been dead? And that kind of thing. So he took off that ring, marches me to the toilet, drops that ring in the toilet, and then flushes it. And in that moment, I just felt like, when I remember like my childhood memory, in that moment, I just felt like this is it. This is our slate. This is our stage. We can go on and be a couple and bring these kids over and, that kind of stuff. The delulu was intense. And then at some point, my mom found out because she came to the island, I think around end of September, because that's usually when we have the Independence Day for 1st October. She came around and she heard it, so she was quite alarmed. I remember she had called a few of our family friends that were priests to talk to me, but her own angle, sometimes the angle you choose to talk to someone who is already delusional can really derail things. It was like, oh, he's Muslim, so he's allowed to have 4 wives. So me, I just blocked it like, oh no, he will never do that to me. So I wasn't even listening. And then she was like, oh, but you have to go to university. But I can go to university. So it was like I had a block for everything. And the relationship between my mom and I was already really turbulent. And he knew this because I'd told him quite a lot. Because children can be trusting, which means with a little digging, children can tell a lot to people they trust. So he was leveraging on that chaotic relationship between my mom and I, because at some point my mom had a big fight while she was visiting, and I don't remember how, but my mom called him. So he came to the house, and instead of my mom giving him like a marching order, stay away from my daughter and that kind of situation, my mom tried to use him to resolve our issues, like tell him what had happened and get him to tell me to pipe down, respect your mother, and those kind of stuff. And I remember that we were sitting, my mom and I were sitting with him in the living room, and it was this explosive conversation where my mom and I were fighting and were really yelling at each other. And then he tried to settle us down, and we ended up going to a restaurant for dinner with him. When I thought about it later as an adult, it was super weird, but that happened. We went to this restaurant in JV camp, some restaurant that we used to pay in dollars, even it was in Nigeria back then. That was the restaurant we went to sit down and keep discussing this matter. And then my mom left because she was living in Abuja, and this relationship continued. And then the next phase of the relationship was Ramadan. Ramadan of 2003 was end of October to end of November. And in that period, I didn't see him a lot because normally before he used to come to me lunchtime, every time he wanted to hang out with me. But in the fasting period, I didn't see a lot of him. And he used to eat his lunch, I think, in the canteen in the afternoon, then make do in the night. But because he couldn't eat in the canteen in the afternoon because he had to fast, I was now making most of his meals. And I remember there was this particular fruit salad which I refused to eat these days because I made it a lot in that period. It was watermelon and pineapple in simple syrup. But I used to make it like almost every day, and he'll come and pick it, to break his fast. Then there was a close that a lot of Muslims lived in, and they used to gather there to pray after iftar. And then later in the night, he'll now ask me to come out or that kind of stuff. But I didn't have a lot of contact with him during the COVID, the Ramadan period itself. But I remember something else happened before the Ramadan. Around that Independence Day festivities, there was a celebration that they were doing in the Boulevard in Bonny. So it's a central garden where they do some parties. And I was there with a friend of mine. And, we're just walking around, dancing, having a good fun. And at some point, I looked up where the buffet stand was. And I saw the Indian guy I told you guys about last life. The one I told you was a friend of mine for many years and then got married and left the island. So I looked up. I was so shocked. I didn't expect to see him because I hadn't seen him in a year. So I walked over to that table to say hello because that's what normal people do. And I'd never talked about him to the Bruneian guy. So I didn't expect that he knows anything about him or anything. So I went, had a quick chat, asked him what he was doing here. He said that the wife's family were moving from Russia because when he went to marry, they were living in Russia. They were moving from Russia to Canada or something. So he had this gap period and he came back to Nigeria for work. So I said hello, I left. Then later in the evening, the Bruneian guy was very angry with me. Thank you. Was very angry with me. So I was like, what's going on? He said, did I have fun talking to my ex-boyfriend today? I said, who is my ex-boyfriend? Like, it took a while for my brain to boot because that was when I realized that every single person that I've ever spoken to on the island, everything on that island, he knew. He now said the Indian that he knows, of course, blah, blah, blah. When I stopped hanging out with a lot of the Nigerians is that they would approach me to ask me out. I would say no. And then they will try to slut shame me. They will now say, hey, if it's this person, you will agree, or that person. So that used to really upset me. So this person seemingly acting like they've never heard anything about me before made me feel safe. And I was now the one volunteering information to him. So can you just imagine that I was now getting silent treatment for saying hello to my Indian friend. And I was so shocked. And it was at that point that I was starting to wonder, what more does this person know? What is the game? And so this whole thing kept going on, that silent treatment was really his mechanism to keep me in line. But apart from that, we did a lot of sports, we hung out, and we got close. And then he traveled. So at the end of Ramadan, he told me he was going home on holiday. So he traveled. The night before he traveled, he came to my house. I know my dad was not in town and my mom didn't live on Bonny. So he came to my house. He was sitting on my couch till like midnight, telling me how much he loved me. He used to call me Sayang. I think it's sweetheart or darling in Malay. He was from Brunei. Sayang this, Sayang that. And then he left and traveled. So I was still feeling like someone in love, someone who had a boyfriend, someone whose boyfriend was coming back, blah, blah, blah. And one morning, My dad was at work. The phone in the house rang. So I went to pick it up. It was my dad, and he said to me, he now asked me if the Bruneian guy was married. I asked him, what kind of question is this? Like, where is it coming from? He said, because he's gotten a request, because my dad is a doctor. So when a new person is coming, when a new staff is coming to the company, they send him a request for the person's pre-employment medicals. So he had received the request for the pre-employment medical of the Bruneian guy's wife. So apparently, before he ever approached me, he was married. So I think he was widowed. He had 2 daughters from his previous marriage. And he wanted a wife so that he could bring his children and set up a new family. So he married a girl who worked in the company in Brunei LNG, which was where he worked. So he married a lady from his company and then started doing the paperwork, but he came back to Nigeria. And that's, as an adult now, that explains the urgency, the efforts, the detail, the precision, because he had a short timeline, because he knew that he had to get with me in a particular timeline before he needed to go and bring his wife back to Nigeria. Like, I'm holding the phone in shock, in like absolute shock. I think I remember screaming. And my friend was visiting then. And she asked me what happened. So I'm trying to explain what I'm hearing, but the words were not really, coming out of my mouth, because how do you explain that? The people who used to bully you and shun you, you've gotten bold, like you've gotten this stamina and strength to like look them in the face, tell them off because you're in love and you're in this cocoon and you're going to be with this person forever. And then all of a sudden he's married. Not only is he married, the wife is coming with those children that were supposed to be your children. Like, we used to, like, there's this, he said Nurul, then we say the name of the children or whatever. So, we had all this life planned. And it's flashing before my eyes, and I didn't know how to deal. I was 17. But if this is where the story ended, it would even have been, maybe I would not have had trauma, because while it lasted, those 4 years, those 4 months, I think I would say that I was more happy than not happy, if I'm being honest. Sometimes we don't tell certain stories because we feel shame. But like I said last week, we must put shame to where it belongs. We can't accept shame for what we're not responsible for. So, key teaching points for this week, before I tell you what happened afterward, like the community participation in my bullying and isolation. So, when teenagers date adults, the first thing you have is a power imbalance. So that power imbalance was in the age gap, which was 17 years, life experiences. So he understood how to get what he wanted. Like, I did everything he wanted, anyhow he wanted it. Like, I felt so grateful to have someone just listen to me, take care of me, take my side of everything that I had to say. So I felt a type of gratitude that was not normal, that should not have been. So life experience, they outweigh you. And then he had this parental status, which I didn't. Emotional manipulation and ability to live without consequences. And this is where I tell people, like the actress I mentioned earlier, she has 2 children with that man. She's been accused of being a drug addict. There's been allegations that she was domestically abused. A lot of allegations have come up. But every time the blame is put firmly on her, no one questions the husband. He only does PR so that it doesn't affect his position in society. But every time someone is being dragged, it's her. Because there's just a power imbalance. Who are you? Teenagers cannot negotiate equally with adults. We need to know this. So if you're a parent and your child is insisting that in love, that they will call you a bad person, but one day, in hindsight, they will understand the fights that you're fighting today. So be firm. Grooming often disguises itself as serious intention. This man was, and that's why Nigeria especially, and in some tribes in particular, they raise women to aspire to marriage. So you need to cook so you get a good husband. You need to cook so you get a new husband. You need to do this so you get a good husband. What that does is that when someone targets you and they're talking marriage, especially when you're already miserable where you are, so you're not looking at marriage as the escape. And this is a trauma that we need to stop sending down generations further, where people just want to marry because they could not bear the situation in their father's house, so they want to go to a husband's house. That's kind of situation. So it disguises as serious intention. It looks protective. It looks mature. You're lonely. You need someone who understands you. It's offering you stability and attention. To a teen seeking safety or validation, this feels meaningful. And this is where the catch is. This is why it's very difficult to try to get a teenager who thinks they're in love out of that situation. So I just want you to know that it's not about, sometimes, yes, poverty plays a role. You want to jump into a situation because you want a better life, but also there are rich kids, middle-class kids who fall into this kind of relationships. Community betrayal. So instead of holding an adult accountable, communities often shame the younger person, protect the adult's reputation, rewrite the narrative because you're spoiled, and treat the teen as the problem. This reinforces silence and trauma, which means that you can't even talk about it then, and as an adult, self-preservation or whatever, you try to hide it, that it ever happens. But you know what? I was back in Bonny, where it happened in 2021, and I came back and a few people started to whisper about it again. So it looks like a story that people want to use and hold me. But like each time I talk, each time I raise my shoulder, each time I want to be great, someone will now say they know you and they'll say this. So, and since last year, it has come to me that any story someone is trying to use to hold you bound, tell it yourself so that nothing can stop your ministry or your movement in this life. So since last year, I've had a lot of stories stacked up to just tell so that the last chains can be gone, you know? So public humiliation as control, bullying and taunting serve to discourage speaking out, erase sympathy, warn other girls to stay away and stay quiet, protect the adult from scrutiny. So I told you that I would tell you what happened after the point that I knew. So I was shocked, and the next people that will know, because they were experts coming into Bonny, the next set of people that will know is an organization that helps expats settle well in different locations. That organization is called Outpost. So the ladies who work in Outpost would also get a request to onboard the spouse, because she was coming in both as a spouse and a staff on cross-posting. So of course, they had to onboard her. So they heard. So they started to tell other spouses. And at this point, I was facing major isolation from the Nigerian families. So I was hanging out more with some of these expat families. I was playing badminton with them. I was swimming and going to barbecues with them. And then all of a sudden, I would come in at badminton, they're talking, everybody just go quiet. They're talking about me. I try to play. They'll say that, oh, they're waiting for someone else. And all of a sudden, the panic that I used to have before I jumped into this frying pan of a relationship was brewing. The panic and the anxiety that I was suddenly not going to have anyone to talk to. This was even before he arrived with the wife on the island. Like, this is just that they now knew, and they were also getting the ideas that I knew, and I didn't know he was married until my father called the house to ask me because he received the pre-employment medical requests. So this was happening, and I think it took a week before they arrived or something. So only one person, only one lady, she was from Indonesia, and she was close to him. She was married to a guy from Scotland who were friends, and she was close to him, and she didn't know. And because she's also Muslim, sometimes they did iftar together and stuff. So she didn't know. So she called me and asked me if I knew he was married. I said, no, I didn't know anything. And at this point, I didn't even know if the 2 children were from this woman he was never widowed. Like, I didn't know what to believe anymore. I was confused. So I explained to her everything I knew that I really did not know. So she was the one who now went and talked to the experts community, like helped me. She went to talk to them, explain to them. So some of them did apologize to me and kind of held me down, tried to settle me in. And then they arrived. That's when the bullying started. Like adults that should know better. They will call me, they will mock me, they will laugh at me, they will ask me, where is your boyfriend? So when they arrived, in good faith though, I baked some cake. I went to the family house. I gave them the cake, welcomed them to the compound. So that's the wife and the 2 daughters. And I saw a big portrait of a wedding picture. So at least I was kind of relieved that the wedding picture, the daughters looked like their current age. So it looks like maybe he married in the last year or in the year before, something like that. So at least it's not like he was never widowed. So at least there was some small truths, if you will. So that happened, and people still kept asking me everywhere I go, have you heard? Have you heard? Have you seen them? And it was really, I was getting really, really depressed. I didn't know how to deal, how to handle it. So at some point I called him and I said, everybody, you did this to me. And now everybody keeps asking me, so now you're going to do something for me. You're going to ask your wife and your 2 daughters to follow me to happy hour. I'm going to parade them around so that all these idiots can know that I know and stop asking me. He thought about it. He said, okay. So they picked me up. We went to happy hour, which is this event we have every Friday on the island. You can buy drinks, half the price. There's usually a live band or DJ. People are always out there. So I arrived with him and his family. Everybody's staring at us like we have to. It was horrible, but it needed to be done. And after that period, of course, we didn't talk much. We didn't hang out. I would see him in badminton once in a while, but it was like there was separation. But he still had me believe that the culture, the religion, because I wanted to go to university, this is what separated us. We're still Sayang. So we used to text each other and call each other like people who this unfortunate situation got in between us, right? That kind of nonsense that I know better now. But at that point, we're still acting like we're sending emails, not text, because I didn't have a phone. We're sending emails and still almost like giving each other condolences. It was horrible. And yeah, it was really, really bad. And I was really depressed. At some point, I stopped eating. I stopped living. I stopped going out. I stopped eating. And then by the time December rolled around and my mom came to Bonnie for Christmas, so she was there end of September into October. Even that October period, I remember that my sister got an award, I think best graduating student from the primary school, and they were giving her a prize. So she was a special guest, and we had gone to the independence party in the banquet hall. So I was sitting with my mom, my dad, and my sister at a table, and he came and joined that table, and the whole compound was looking at us. And my parents didn't say anything to him because there wasn't really anything to say to him. Everybody's trying not to be rude and polite. So we all sat at that table and we all looking like in-laws. And then for this to happen was a lot. Like we're everywhere together. And then all of a sudden he's everywhere with his wife. Like Every time I saw him, every time I looked up, he was with his wife. It was crazy. So by the time my mom arrived in December, I had lost weight. I had lost, like, I was fading. I had stopped eating. I remember she dragged me to the shop to buy, there's this food replacement drink called, I think, Coplan. It's like milk, like smoothie kind of milk that I will now make. She'll force me to drink it at least once a day. That's how bad things got. And then the next year, in that period, so I had a different depression because my WAEC result now came around. So English was seized, and without English, you can't get into any university. The English result was seized, and then I didn't pass math. I got a D7, which means that either way, I had to do GCE or do WAEC again in another school. So my dream of going to university that year was out. I had to wait a year to go to the university, which means that I was now stuck in Bonny, because normally before, when all this other bullying was happening before this period, I always had midterm break, I'd go back to boarding school, holiday, after holiday, I go back to boarding school. But I now had this situation that I was now sitting on the island. The next year rolled around, his wife was pregnant. My dad worked in the hospital, so sometimes I used to go into the hospital to see him. So I'll come in, it's antenatal day, she's sitting there with her big belly, with other pregnant women on the corridor, and he's sitting beside her, and then the nurses start whispering. It was horrible. So I think that next year they just decided that it was better for me to be off the island as much as possible. So I went to Enugu, and that's how I spent most of 2004 in and out of Enugu. And then by the time I came back, I also did a lot of as much reflection as a child could do, but I now had a different coping mechanism for dealing with the talk, because the talk continued. Like, even I went to university, I came back, every time someone talks to me, every time something is happening, someone brings it up, regurgitates it. Like, and that's why I see that some people, when they've had this kind of traumatic experiences in childhood, when they move, they really move, they try to cut off where they come from, they try to avoid people who used to know them, just to not have these stories come, because it's trauma and you don't even know you're dealing with trauma. And some of them can have physiological effects, like, digestive problems, it's chronic stress. And as an adult, when it starts, like this year, for example, has really been triggering with all the Epstein files and the way they were bullying that actress in Nigeria who had married at 17 to a much older man. So the news was like constantly triggering, because I was now remembering, but now as an adult, I could like piece it all together, understand exactly what happened and how damaging it was, and the shame and guilt and everything that come with it that had stopped me from properly functioning in any capacity, just living your fullest life, because you're always waiting for one shoe to drop, for someone to say something, for someone to remember. But at this point, that this was not to relieve trauma. This is not to reopen old wounds. This is to help other women who have not had this level of reflection to understand, to recognize what happened to them. It has a name. It's grooming. If it was done properly, you didn't stand a chance. So you can start to, healing begins with placing the responsibility where it belongs, allowing yourself space to heal, to feel, to just let go of all that trauma and all that pain, right? And if you were a teenager involved with an adult, you were not mature for your age. No. You were a child navigating adult behavior without adult protection. You didn't stand a chance. And as parents, I'm giving us this because Your daughters are going to become teenagers. They're going to think they're in love. They're going to think they understand life. You can share this story with them. You can share your own stories with them, because sometimes as parents, we want to look good to our children. So we tell all these funny lies where we never did anything, we don't know anything, they should just do what we're telling them. But sometimes telling relatable stories works. It just helps them have perspective and understanding. Let's just keep protecting our children. And I hope that this section has been, how do I say it, educative, informative, or whatever for you. Next week, I will discuss long-term traumatic effect of being groomed. So this is it for today. I hope you have a good weekend. Stay safe, guys. Bye.